why I use this language of the Marshall-style plan.
After World War II.
After World War II. And I think it's actually much more challenging than that. I do think that unless we are prepared to move the resources and the labour, so the resources and the labour that have furnished the relatively high carbon lifestyles of a small but significant swathe of society, we move those labour and resources, not give them to the poor, but we use those for making the physical infrastructural transition that is necessary to drive us towards zero carbon emissions by 2030 or 2035, which is the sort of time frame, we would say 2035 from some of our work, that would be necessary for meeting our Paris obligations, somewhere around the 2°C framing. Unless we're prepared to do that, we are going to continue to fail. And at the moment, there are almost no voices prepared to see this challenge like that. It's somehow where we can carry on business as usual and do this as well. And I think that misunderstands the scale of the challenge.
So you're talking there about academics, and I've got two questions here which are sort of related. So I'll read them both, and you can sort of maybe can put the two together. I think I know the answer to this one. Is it time that academics and researchers took off their gloves, especially the ones who have access to government? But related, how do we sell a reduction in material consumption to the millions who've been raised to believe that more stuff equals better life? So it's a hard sell.
I'm not sure it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is. So the first one, I think as academics, I take this view that the academics are most political are those that stay quiet. Yes. Thomas More's maxim, as I repeatedly will say. So your silence is deafening. It says the status quo is fine. And how many academics come up and say that fracking doesn't align with Paris, or that the Clay Ridge oil platform, or the Glengorm gas field, or Heathrow expansion, or the expansion of M4? Who out there? Where do we hear the academics saying this? They're just silent about it. So they're saying they're all fine, basically. And the CCC are saying they're all fine. They're not prepared to do that. I mean, it's a real concern to me that we have abdicated that responsibility. We have put on the gloves that government has given us. That's not to say some of the academics have done some really good work as well. I mean, particularly on the science, they've been doing that science work. But the science work, as I say, you can do it without having direct political repercussions. The mitigation agenda is not like that. And I think the social scientists have not had their voices heard, but that's partly because they haven't made enough noise. And they've been pretty much ostracised, perhaps, or marginalised within the IPCC process. So they've not had their voices. Now that is slowly changing, and not just the idea that can we quantify the social science work and shove it in our models. I mean, the social sciences are much more than that, and they are absolutely pivotal to understand these issues, and issues of political science and so forth as well. So the academics, I think, need to go back to their, in my view, maybe it's a naive view, they need to be indifferent of the political and economic sensibilities. And I always make this point.
Career-limiting moves, though, surely.
Or I would argue career-enhancing. Because I think most people expect the academics to be like that. They don't expect them to be the mouthpiece of industry or government. Unless it aligns with exactly what our research tells us. So I don't think it's necessarily career limiting. And as soon as more people start to do it, quite quickly, I think the house of cards collapses from those people who have maintained the political dialogue through fine-tuning their analysis. Well, it's more than fine-tuning sometimes. So I think there is scope for us doing that. As academics, we shouldn't care whether people like or dislike our conclusions, only whether they agree or disagree. And I think we need to inculcate that much more in our society, in our academic community. And I think most younger academics, early career academics, generally see the world like that. Unfortunately, they're continuing.
They're living precarious lives, Kevin.
They are living relatively precarious lives.
Yeah, relatively.
But I think collectively they have a lot of power. So this is why often I think collectively standing up for what's right, and I think you get a lot of power with that. So that's the first question. But your second one about the this idea of trying to sell something that's significantly different from what we've been selling or what we've been sold, either from an emergent perspective or from some people deliberately doing this, in terms of increased material consumption. Well, firstly, for a lot of people in society, that's not what they're seeing. Whole swathes of people have not done particularly well post-austerity, and so that has become the new norm. I think the banking crisis was 2007, and we're now in 2019, and that's still an issue that's there. Lots of people in the UK are not better off than they were then, and their children, they don't think their children are going to be better off in that conventional sense that we had normalised. Of course, it wasn't normal, but we had normalised it for the previous 100 or so years. Also, I think there's a recognition of some of the mental stresses that come about the world, the very competitive world we live in, which we're all fighting with each other, and psychologically that suits some people, but for large swathes of people it doesn't suit them. I think a lot of people would like to spend more time with their friends and their family doing fun things, don't want to work all hours. So I think there are a whole swathe of things that you have to sort of pull them in, sort of write appealing narratives about them. But I don't think we're short of plots to write. I don't think there's a plot, a way it should be. I think there are multiple narratives that can be written, that can attractively sell a different world view. And it's some really fascinating work that keeps going on in Finland. It seems a very experimental sort of place, looking at some of these issues. And so it might range from sort of universal incomes to 3-day weeks to a whole swathe of other things that are out there. And I don't think we should be stopping what they look like, and they shouldn't all look like communes. I mean, I think we have to be very careful of moving all of these things to some sort of left-wing view of the world. I may like that, but lots of my colleagues that I used to work offshore would not like that. They still prefer a more individualistic view of the world, and I think we have to say, well, what narratives of that framing of society could they find appealing? So I think that's why I think it's to be a pluralistic set of narratives, many of which I won't like, but that's a positive thing. So I'm not quite so sure it's hard to sell, particularly not at the moment. So I think from the way that a lot of, particularly continental Europe, swathes of young people in France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, who are really struggling, and they're not seeing a life of prosperity and material consumption. So maybe actually a new dialogue in some of these countries might actually be something they would find quite attractive. And of course, we are finding them attractive to, in my view, sometimes quite repressive dialogues that are coming from some of the parties that are standing and winning votes. So perhaps we need a more progressive, and I would make similar arguments about Brexit in the UK. That I think that there were we spoke continually about the economy. We dragged out people who had failed to predict the banking crisis, who had done remarkably well out of the post-war consensus, to tell us about we should carry on with more of what we had before, which I'm not surprised people didn't believe them. I think we could have spoken a much more positive, progressive narrative about a union of Europe, with us all having our individual culture and so forth. But we didn't sell that one. But it's not how we spoke about it on either side.
I knew Brexit. I deliberately had left Brexit out. I knew it would creep back in.
Well, not a comment one or the other. I want to make the comment here is that we don't describe positive, progressive narratives. We describe narratives of fear, and that your question partly comes out of this idea of this one of fear. And I think, well, there are positive ways to look at this. Now, it's going to be challenging for some people. It doesn't mean that some of the norms that some of us have about large houses, regularly flying, business and first class, second homes, SUVs, all the rest of it, that those questions will have to be had. But most people don't have those things. Most people, they may aspire to them, they're never going to get them. It's the sort of, it's the lottery tickets for the masses. That these people are not going to become millionaires. They're going to live lives like they've got today. But I think those lives could be incrementally but significantly improved. That will require that small swathe of people to make some big, I call them sacrifices. I think there may be sacrifices at first, but I think they may see living in a society that's more cohesive and with greater purpose, unity of purpose, but still being eclectic and pluralistic as a more positive society to live in. But that will take some time for them to see that, if they ever would.
Have you read Animal Farm recently?
Not recently, but it's a wonderful. Most George Orwell's worth reading anyway.
When I'm chief fascist dictator, everyone's going to have to read Animal Farm once a year, and then write an essay about how it relates to the current organisation that they're part of. And one of the animals in Animal Farm that simply can't cope with the revolution is the horse that loves the ribbons that the farmer's wife would put on it, and it does a runner. So who knows? Final question.
There's also, is it Snowball that goes off to the glue factory?
No, Boxer.
A Boxer, that's
which is why my wife refuses to read Animal Farm again.
Well, to some extent, I think us as academics fit in that a little bit. That we're really happy with the way things are going, and perhaps deep down we know there's some questions.
The academics are clearly the pigs.
Yes, perhaps. Yeah, we can look. I think maybe there's bits of our character in all of them.
There is a rogue intellectual, Benjamin the donkey. But
that's right. Yes.
No.
I will have to reread this now. Some time ago since I read it. Yeah.
Excellent. Final question, I'll conflate, and thank you very much for the time you've taken, Kevin. The thorny question of hope. So there are two quotes that spring to mind. One is from Greta saying, "I don't want your hope, I want your panic," basically. The other quote is by Dr. or maybe she's Professor, I don't know, Kate Marvel, the NASA scientist, and she points out that hope isn't particularly useful. What we need is courage. That's her take on it. What's yours? Do you feel the need for hope? And if you do, where do you get it from? Or do you think we need something else?
I think hope emerges. It emerges from other things. So it doesn't just exist. I don't think it emerges from agency. It emerges from trying to make change. It emerges from ways that you can see out of the chaos and the malaise you're actually in. So I hope you have to actually explore the situations, and only when you explore them can you decide whether hope exists or not. I think to randomly have bits of hope, which I think is what repeatedly that sort of language is used. I hope. I don't give a damn about what you hope. What's your framing that gives you that hope?
Hope is not a strategy.
No, it's certainly not a strategy. No, it's nothing like it. And I think actually, this is a bit of an argument of semantics to some extent, but the courage is obviously is a pivotal part of that. And that pivotal part, the reason it's pivotal now is because we've left it so late. Those threads of hope that are there are ones that have to make us, will see us significantly question the paradigm, the orthodoxy, the way things are, how we live our lives. And therefore, you have to have courage to do that, because that is always going to be difficult. By its nature, the orthodoxy will always try to close down things that are trying to get rid of it. And so you have to be able to stand up. And again, this to me goes back to us as academics. That is our job as academics, to stand up for what our analysis tells us, and we haven't done that. Again, we've abdicated that responsibility. So yes, I think so. I suppose I look at it from an academic perspective. To some extent, we are some of the catalysts of hope. If we are the ones that do the analysis, say here's a way out of the problem. Now, if we don't see that, then that's also an important thing to say. So I hope I'm wrong on this, but I think the chances of 1.5 are virtually not there. That's not to say if at some point in the future we can develop some technologies to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in the hundreds of billions of tons away, and it's sustainable and all the other things, maybe we can do that. But to rely on that, as we are doing, as the Committee on Climate Change are doing, virtually every IPCC scenario is doing, and every year to rely on it more than we did the year before, when we've chosen to do nothing else except for watch airport expansion and watch our increase in material goods amongst that that elite group. We aren't driving an agenda of change at the moment. We aren't doing the analysis that illuminates these avenues where hope may exist, and so. I think that when our analysis says this isn't possible, we have to be honest about that. But that doesn't mean to say there's not something else that we can be then trying to aim for. And so hope occurs probably out of careful work and analysis and courage, imagination. So it emerges from a whole suite of things, and it's a catch-all for all of those things, I think. And if we use it, as you say, if you just use some sort of empty, a vacuum of hope as your strategy, then you may as well take Claire Perry's approach to these things, really.
Anything else you want to say? Anything I didn't ask that you were afraid I'd ask? Imagine that I asked it.
One thing I regularly get asked, particularly when I give public talks, but not just public talks, actually, if I give talks within universities, and there's quite a lot of early career researchers there, one thing I'm regularly asked about is, well, what can we do? And my pet psychology view of this is there are three things that we should try and do. Other people may completely disagree with this. The first thing is identify where's our high carbon component of our lives and try and change it, which is fine. Great, we've reduced emissions, marvellous. But really, what matters is then to talk about that. It's not the emissions themselves. It's the idea that we are trying to reduce our emissions, and we are vociferous about it, and we engage with our friends and our family and others to normalise that discussion about trying to do that. But that again, that's the individualistic part spread wide, if you like, because that's our point about that engagement. But the next one is to engage locally. So engage within your university. Push the universities to divest. The universities have been appalling from that perspective. And I always had naively thought in the past the universities were at sort of the forefront of emerging agenda. Now it feels to some extent we're sort of locked into the previous century rather than the 21st and aiming for the 22nd century. But so argue within our institutions, with our universities and our hospitals and our schools and our local sports clubs and places of work, argue for change there as well. And there'll be lots of other voices that will only be too pleased to have that sort of catalyst somewhere within there. But then also and argue with our or engage with our political process. These are not all bad people, regardless of your political persuasion one way or another, regardless of your Brexit persuasion one way or another. Lots of good people are trying to do things in Parliament and at local levels as well. We may disagree with them in fundamental ways. I engage with lots of policymakers. I disagree with them on most things virtually all of the time, and yet I still think they are trying. They are trying to do something. So engage with the political realm. Let them know not just what you disagree with, but when they do things you support, let them know that you support them, because they don't get that very. These people mostly get when there's something goes that they don't agree with. People will let them know very vociferously. But when there's something you do agree with, you sort of say something over your tea at home or over a pint in a pub. We don't actually say, yes, I agree with you. Carry on with this. Good work. And also be cautious of journalists, I think. Because I think journalism in this has been almost as bad as, if not worse, than the academics overall. And maybe I talk about British journalism to some extent, and that's not to say there aren't some really good exceptions, but everything's painted as black and white. It's how do you sell space, how do you justify your licence fee. So across the board, it's become a competitive model in so much of journalism. So if you listen whether it's the Today programme or most of these sort of headline programmes, you get black and white views of these things. But if you listen to programmes like Analysis or some of the late night programmes, you get much better interpretations of the nuances, and it's the nuances that are important. And that's true whether it's Brexit, either way, or whether it's climate change, or whether it's almost every other issue. We polarise issues in journalism, which has been incredibly unhelpful to try and understand these issues that we have today. So be cautious of journalism, engage politically at a national and local level, engage with your own institutions, and make changes yourself, but talk about it enthusiastically with people around you.
Kevin, thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh.